Hello, everyone, and welcome to the greatest episode of Hotline League ever. It's going to be a banger. There's so much to talk about tonight, so much so that we decided not even to have a guest on so that Mark and I didn't have to worry about them blabbing up the lines. You guys can all call in with all of your takes because, boy, golly gee, is there a lot going on these days. First off, let me introduce my constant co-host, Mark Zimmerman. How's it going, Mark?
Great. Following up with last episode's engagement bait right at the beginning, my point continues to be proven true. Rings of Power, absolute dog water writing.
I watched episode 3 and I liked it more than the first two.
So I said episode 3 was maybe my favorite so far.
No
But
spoilers.
episode 4 instantly just like catapulted that. There's so many things wrong with it. House of the Dragon, you and I talked before about how it's not hitting the same highs for Game of Thrones of us. I'm still enjoying it at least.
Okay.
At least I don't dislike it.
Yeah, well,
I actively find myself unengaged.
are you going to keep watching Rings of Power?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're just going to hate watch it at this point in time.
I watch everything.
Okay, great. Anyway,
I watched. All right, so while we're on I watched Do Revenge. That was a very good movie. It was like this a Zoomers homage, or like it's made for Zoomers, and it's homage to all like '90s rom-coms and like a lot of those kinds of like teenage coming of age movies. Like John Tucker Must Die and like Mean Girls and a lot of like those plus rom-coms. But it updates all of them to be modern, and the jokes are not bad. The way that you might expect of like someone writing a movie for Zoomers, and then it also still enhances it and does like a unique twist and like brings its own thing to the table. So like it's a really good movie. Would recommend. A lot of other stuff came out, but I can't remember now that I watched over the weekend. Falling apart. All right. Anyways, there you go.
great. Loved it. I like Rings of Power still. So, shout out to Alienware and Grubhub for sponsoring the show. A couple different things. So, one, at the end of the show, so after the stream is done, we are going to be watching, if you guys know Silvix, who does a bunch of really cool content in the space, does a bunch of hype videos. He's given us exclusive rights to debut his new North American Worlds hype video. And it says like North American Worlds or something. There's like a teaser that he tweeted out. So we're going to be getting that out and we'll watch it on stream together. It'll be fun. We were going to put it in the show itself. And then I made the realization that there was a copyright music situation there that would not have allowed us to play it as a podcast distribution stuff. So we'll do it afterwards, but it'll be fun. Secondly, we are going to be doing, or are already doing, a fundraiser for a charity called Women in Games International. Want to make it clear, this is not something where I've like partnered with them directly. They don't even really probably know that I'm doing this. I just use Twitch has a new charity function in the back end that you can pick certain charities to do fundraisers, and it's very seamless. I set the goal at 1,028 cents. And so far from the start of the stream, we're already at 305. So I will be thanking people who sub, but please do not sub. If you already have like a resub going or you have a Prime or something like that, sure, that's fine. But don't bits, don't do anything like that. Just tonight, please help pump that donation goal as high as possible because I think it'd be really fun if we hit it or even surpassed it. And I felt like this new charity thing is like brand new for Twitch, I think. They only added it on the back end recently. And I thought it was a good time to use it because of recent events, which I guess we might chat on a little bit. But that's a thing. And then I wanted to give a shout out to Numi, who's in the chat, who I've officially brought on as the TGI community manager because she was literally doing all of that for free, and I decided I would at least pay her a nominal fee because it was nice of her to do that already. So if anybody ever has feedback or questions or whatever, you don't need to DM me directly on Discord. You can DM her instead or Twitter or something like that. So that's all the TGI updates for now. We should have I'm aiming to have a very big announcement for next Monday, but I don't know if we will do that or not. So stay tuned. Mark Zimmerman, what should we talk about this week?
All right, so obviously we're gonna keep no guest lines open. We'll probably chat a little bit, like you said, especially about the Carlos stuff. I don't know if we'll take a caller on it because I think most people are kind of on the same page, but we at least need to cover it in some depth, or at least a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Then aside from that, Han Sama, I don't know if you saw this because I actually haven't heard you say it yet, is gone officially. Team Liquid put out their video. Off season starting before play-ins even begins. So we'll have to talk about that a little bit. There's also, I know you want to talk about Worlds format stuff at some point. I feel like this is probably the best episode to do it. I'll probably do the blame game on that this week at your editorial decision.
You could make it on whatever. Editor. That was a suggestion. I said, do you want else to do? I literally, because you, this is the thing is I knew you were going to get into this dead zone. And so I've made suggestions now twice for what we could do for that episode.
Yeah, if I can try and do something else, and you're like, what do you want to do, Mark? Get enough engagement. I just don't get enough engagement.
What do you want to do, Mark?
Are you sure this?
What do you want to do?
Format video.
Yeah, well,
because there was a thread on Reddit on the front page over the weekend. I forget if it was Sunday or Saturday.
5 threads.
Yeah,
like it's like the Worlds format sucks. Why haven't they changed it? Wow, every LCS. I'm surprised that the mods have allowed it to be up there that often. Not that I think it shouldn't be, but like normally they take down stuff. Yeah. Then it was like Valorant had this. Why doesn't Riot do it there? It is, people are clamoring. So yeah.
Anyway, so there's all that stuff. There's obviously other Worlds topics. I think this is a good general episode where we're kind of doing an open mic night. So even though I just listed a bunch of things, we're more likely to stray into the like kind of whatever topics that we sometimes overlook.
Yeah.
I know people sometimes talk about like formats we should do, and let's bring back best of 3 or something. And we roll our eyes and never take that call. But this is the kind of night where maybe we'll take one of those calls or something.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. So yeah, there's just a bunch of stuff. We can keep like next episode. We'll probably talk more about plans because it'll be like plan starts next week, which you would not know if you went to lolesports.com and clicked on the schedule button.
The classic Travis.
That was the
Travis
standings button.
He trolls the website looking for anything out of place so he can tweet about it. That's what Travis does for fun.
Here's what happened. This is the funniest shit. Okay, so Emily and I recorded because I'm gonna go see family for a birthday thing tomorrow. So Emily and I recorded Rift reaction early this week, and right beforehand I was like, we made the poll for this week's episode of Rift, which is available on Spotify if anybody wants to listen to it. We made the poll like which group do you think is harder? And obviously people will skew one way or the other, but I wanted to read off the names of all the teams in both groups. And so 3 minutes before we're going live, I go to LOL Esports and click standings, and it's just empty. And so we start the show with me being like, oh my God, guys, like, why does LOLesports.com suck? Like, Emily and I are trying to just do this show, whatever. And the funniest fucking shit is, we'll see if they do it. Maybe they won't do it this time. But they embed the show on the front page of LOLesports.com. So if you go later this week, if they actually do it, you can go to the front page of LOLesports.com and press play and immediately hear me complaining about LOLesports.com. So I don't know if it's going to go up on the site or not.
I hope maybe they cancel your ass.
Maybe they'll skip this episode. I mean, they can't cancel the show because it's a Spotify show. Some people are confused about that sometimes. They think that it's a Riot show.
Well, they can cancel putting it on the front page of LOL Esports.
Right. So but yes, if you go and you look at you cannot find virtually any information about groups in the built-in LOL Esports functionality. And if you click schedule, it just still says like there's nothing here, even though Worlds is starting next week, which is just, I don't know what to do, man. I don't know. I maybe everybody switched to Val from the global team, and now there's nobody left to even update the website. But it's just crazy.
Everyone's praising the Val team on the League of Legends Reddit.
It's good.
It's like, psych, we're all over there.
Yeah, I should just switch to Val next year. Rift. Hey, Hotline League is a Hotline Val. Is that what that would be? I don't know.
Rumors are they're canceling the dive. Where are you hearing that rumor?
Ooh, this is a rumor. Let's get into this.
Someone just put it in chat. I haven't heard it.
Okay,
where did you hear that? I suspect you're about to say nowhere.
Less competition.
I heard that too. Where are you fuckers hearing? You in Kobe's stream and Kobe's saying it, and he knows, and nowhere. Nowhere. Yeah, I didn't think so. I was like, I know we're literally doing the dive in
You're
about
getting
2 weeks for Worlds play-ins, so that'd be a weird thing to have it not be there.
you're getting baited by the Twitch chat again, Mark, which is not
Yeah, I
good.
am. All right, so let's get into the first significant topic of the evening.
Yeah. Well, so I guess we should say
We should recap for people who don't live on Twitter.
Why don't you do your best, Mark?
Okay, so I believe this was Saturday. Um, Carlos of the G2 CEO. I guess he's not technically the owner anymore. I'm not. It always gets a little fuzzy to me when people are like the founding member, and then they kind of get bought out, and they don't quite have the shares anymore or
Sure.
whatever.
He's
Anyways,
the face of that organization from a leadership.
yeah, everyone knows who we mean by Carlos. So he posted a short video of him celebrating a win in not Valorant. I don't think. I forget which esport it was. Rainbow Six. I don't even really know. Anyways, they won something, and they posted a video, and in the background of like them all partying, you could see someone called Andrew Tate in the video. And if you're not familiar with Andrew Tate, I don't want to take the entire podcast recapping that guy's history, but he is banned off of most major, if not all major social media platforms for misogyny. He's being investigated for crimes. He's pretty clearly not a good person.
Yeah.
But he does have a cult following for some young men because he kind of preaches that like alpha male energy angle that can appeal to some types of people, sadly. So anyways, Carlos is partying with him, and that immediately set off a lot of people in Twitter's red flags being like, what the fuck are you doing partying with that guy, Carlos? And that built over the course of the day as people were tweeting more and more shit like that about like, hey, what the fuck? This isn't cool. This guy's problematic. You should not be with him. And eventually it reached a point where Carlos responded to all that and said, this is where I draw the line. I won't let people police who I'm friends with. You know, fuck all y'all, basically.
Where was the line before? That's one I don't quite like. This is where he's drawing line. What were the other areas he didn't?
The line was the Saudi money, that he said he would never take, which then he took. So obviously that wasn't the line. The line was saying you shouldn't hang out with a abuser. I don't know exactly what one word you would pick for Andrew Tate. Anyways, at that point, that really kicked it into overdrive. People really went after him then. And then the next day, the G2 Twitter account posted a thing that they were suspending him for 8 weeks without pay as CEO, as a slap on the wrist, saying that it doesn't align with the company's morals or whatnot. And then Carlos put out like a kind of thing about not reading the room right or something, like a very bad apology, but then was still liking tweets of people basically being like, don't listen to haters, bro. Like, you do you, live your best life kind of thing. So he was clearly not apologetic after the apology. And that's about where we stand today. If you guys are not on the Twitter sphere or on the subreddit, you might have missed all that. There you go.
So, G2 had also just announced a women's team. There's like a lot of irony in a lot of different places. So, that's kind of where we're at. I don't think, I think we're talking about this in part because, I don't know, it's such a huge thing in the space. But we don't tend to usually talk about stuff, even like these kind of bigger scandals outside of LCS, because we tend to focus the stuff a little bit more on LCS, but wanted to address it and just get awareness of the incident out there. And so I don't think we'll probably take any calls because I can't imagine what those calls would be like. It would be like, hey, this was fucking stupid. And then we'd say, yeah, we agree. And then that would basically be the call. But I think sort of as we were considering that, one of the ideas was, again, to support this charity initiative through Twitch's new charity thing. So feel free to support during the stream to Women in Games International. Mark, I don't know if there's anything else we want to say on the topic, but...
No, I just think there's always this funny line to me where people talk about getting canceled, and it's even going on in our Twitch chat right now about canceling people is lame. Some people don't like that. there's a very funny audio clip on TikTok that I really like. It's the if it's not the consequences of my own decisions.
Yeah.
It's like he wasn't canceled like people wrote a ton of letters or anything, but like you want to hang out with someone who's extremely unpopular. People say, hey, that's not cool to us. And he says, well, I'm going to do it. And then people go, okay, well, we don't like you now. And then eventually the company realizes that this is such problematic PR that they try and salvage that. Like, this is just capitalism at work, which I think most people who are saying, oh, this cancel stuff is lame, they're probably pro-capitalism, most of them. I wouldn't speculate too hard on everyone's interest, but like, this is just how things work. It's not, like necessarily, like, I don't know what people think getting canceled is, but it's like, we're not policing you. You didn't break a law. You did something that people don't like. You're a public-facing person, and people are expressing that dislike now. And that is just how society works. It's not like there's no policing actually going on. There's no law breaking. There's no one coming in and like actually slapping him on the wrist. It's just, it's just PR.
Well, regardless, I am very curious to see how this continues on, because I would be surprised if it ends here, and maybe a little disappointed because it feels a little odd. And I'm really curious to see what the sponsorship stuff is going to be like for G2, because it's hard to imagine them not suffering some consequences.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I'd be surprised if they don't lose some folks from this.
I mean, they're going to be less popular for sure, but never, this is my cynical side, never underestimate the internet's ability to forget something that they act like is the end of the world. Yeah. Carlos has been in scandal after scandal after scandal, and he's still here. So I don't suspect him to be like suddenly out of the scene or anything like that. As a player, there were a number of scandals that followed him. I just made a joke about the Saudi thing, but he's still popular. There was, Perks is a god. No one can declare where Perks goes. He's my nephew's favorite uncle, and then it turns out that he refused to move Perks to where he wanted to go after saying Perks can go wherever he wants. Like, there's been a number of scandals, and G2 is still popular. And, so like, I think most likely this isn't actually going to be the end of the world, despite how the internet has talked about it.
Yeah. I just think his reputation will probably not, given the way he approached the reaction, I guess, I think his reputation will probably not recover. It's because I don't think anybody really seems to feel like he's taking the whole thing seriously.
Yeah, the people who are fanboys will continue to fanboy. They are the people who didn't like him, who already knew all this stuff. And then there's people learning this information for the first time who are going to be soured on him. And so it is, it moves the needle, but it's never like fully from like here to like, boom, dead, out of the scene kind of thing.
Yeah. All right. So again, thank you to everybody. We're already at 435 out of our $1,000 goal. So hopefully we can get some more awesome folks to hit up the charity link on the stream. Anyway, what else besides scandal and drama? What else has been happening? We have Hansama.
Isn't that all this show runs on, is scandal and drama?
I don't think so.
We don't do analysis here,
I think of the shows, like The Dive might be the only one besides that is less about scandal and drama than this one. Don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, we talk about some of the stuff on there too.
Yeah.
I'd say it's pretty comparable. The only difference is we don't have callers. So like, the caller will have always like the hotter takes.
Well, you guys don't tend to always talk about Riot scandals and drama on the Riot show, so maybe that is part of it. Okay, Little Nas X stuff got announced.
Oh yeah,
which is cool. What else? Wow, it's been a quiet week. Twitch chat, you guys got anything? This is why we're doing open lives tonight. It's gonna be a great episode. Stick around, but it's gonna be, it's definitely an interesting time to be doing the show. Oh yeah. People are still pushing for best of threes, all the stuff we kind of talked about. So maybe we can. I don't know if you've already been pulling folks, but maybe we can start.
I'm starting to pull folks now. I want to not be distracted while.
Yeah. If you for a long time have been like, no, Mark never takes my take, this is a great episode to try to get on, is I guess what I would say. So Looking forward to it. And it looks like we got a lot of people on the pleb calls and sub calls chat.
There's a lot of topics. I'm just you should read some right now and pull any if any interest you.
Well,
Since it's an open mic.
When you and I are both reading, neither of us are talking, which is really bad for podcast experience.
I'll talk for a couple minutes here.
Okay.
And you pull a couple from pleb topics or subtopics.
Okay.
Just so it's not, because otherwise it's just me pulling, and then people go, Mark, why'd you pull that shit take?
Yeah.
And they're not wrong.
That's what you're trying to do.
You're
trying to duck responsibility for the.
Absolutely. I'm trying to offload my work onto you. No, I'm trying to get you represented. What does Travis Gafford care about? I feel like I don't know Travis.
I guess you do, because every time you already pull
something episodes.
This is what happens. You pull a take, and then you just sit back, lean back, and take a nap, and go, oh, I think this is a Travis one. You'll really like this one. I pulled
this one's got a lot of likes. That's all I do is what's got emojis. Actually, that's the secret to how I pick people. It's got a bunch of yeses.
Okay, so you're filling time, right? How are you going to fill time?
I'm filling time by not talking spoilers about why I don't like Rings of Power.
No, don't do that. We've already the people that are here are not here to listen. It's fine if we're riffing for a couple minutes, but
all right, fine. So here's a topic that I'll be covering in Blame Game this week. And I'm sure we'll try and Travis has been talking about it, which we kind of talked about was the Worlds format discussion. I've done Worlds format discussions before. And normally what I do is I suggest what I would like to see, and I'll probably still do that again, but I think more what I want to do this time too is also try and talk about it from like the actual people planning it perspective, because last year during the Worlds like AMA thingy that they kind of did, they did like a media thing. They talked about like, everyone was like, are you going to change the format? And they're like, we'll see. And they didn't do it for this year. But I do also know that they plan Worlds much further in advance. And so while I don't believe that precludes you from making any changes, at the very least, you can maybe say that like it's more than a 1 year timescale turnaround for massive format changes. If you were going to do something like add double elim, in theory, you could still make it work. In the current, like assuming that you were already picking places and venues and stuff, and looking at days and planning it in like a calendar and slotting it in, like those kinds of things that you need to be answering at the beginning of the year. As you're answering this question, you're like, oh shit, well, we're already planning for next year, probably a little bit. So I'll try and talk about some of that stuff as well. But I also, like I said, don't think that means that you can't make any changes. They plan Worlds so far in advance, they still haven't updated the little esports schedule. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not going to say it's completely not saying that they couldn't have done it, but also just saying probably some of the things that they're trying to come up with.
We should put a character limit on pleb and subtopic stuff. It is insane to me that some people will like write to you and be like, hey, Mark, this is what's going on in my personal life right now, which has allowed me to be here to put this take on so that I could do this, and this is my take.
It's insanity, isn't
it?
Like,
no. We should definitely, after all these episodes, we try.
If people put on walls of text, I just scroll past them. You could probably be a legitimate genius in every word in that wall of text, pure brilliance, and I won't fucking read it because it's just like, what do you want me to do here?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm okay. I've got.
Here's something else. I'm listening to Lord of the Rings audiobook. God, I don't like Tolkien.
Listen. Could you stop? Okay, we need to go back. Here. I have pulled 3. If you want to pull one of them, or if you want to look for one or two more to pull, I can read off people who donated to the charity.
Yeah, why don't you do that while I pull some more people, and then I'll hop in and you just tell me who's the first one you pull.
Okay, first off, thank you to the following people who did sub. ISO Killer, Penguin Buddy, Lil Bonaparte, this is Kakashi, Dean Stay Night, Numi Goes Rar, Get a Grip, Honda CRX, Crockpot, Sarah DG, Shauna Tonin, Big Angry Hobo, Zerthon, Morigami, Mr. Chicken, Liberi. And then here's all the people who donated to the charity that we got going on right now. Starting with Nuclei, Simon Please, Xander Gage, Get a Grip sent $150, which is crazy. Rudiferr, Count, let's see, How to Cow, Sevinon, Sinful Baggins, Sarah DG, Kajit to the Winds donated $50. LFT Alk, Big Angry Hobo, Dean Stay Night, Secret Door, Zamelkai, Rico Suave, and Sev the Sniper. We'll get some more people here. Actually, Mark still hasn't gone yet. So, Ian7JT2, SkyG
Oh,
for
sorry.
50
Yeah,
bucks,
I was just grabbing people.
Raptor,
Who
and a typical Timber. Yes. What's up?
who was the first person you pulled? Mike Spam, Roboton, or Sevinon?
Why does it matter?
Because I try to go in order so that people don't.
I just pull a 7 on, I think. I forget what they all said, so off he goes. Pilgrim Panda, thank you for the sub. Okay. What are we doing? Yes, this podcast prefers Blandon Blanderson. How could I forget? Yeah, thanks, Lion Nation. I'm going to his show in Salt Lake, so I'm looking forward to that soon. But I actually, guys, crazy. I leave for Worlds in just about 2 weeks, so that's pretty wild to think about. Bowen, thank you for donating $50. That's awesome. I think it's a really cool thing. All right, Mark is not in the room, but he sent a guest here. Sevinon, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Princeton, New Jersey.
Princeton, New Jersey. How are things in Princeton, New Jersey these days?
They're doing all right. Unseasonably warm, but other than that, doing well.
Very good. Well, I don't want to start. Did Mark ask for your take? Does he know what it is?
I think he got the gist.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and okay, he's back. What's your take?
So my take is that Riot Events team really dropped the ball on Worlds and NA, and this has been a continuation of something that's been going on for a few years since just before COVID, and has been even more visible as we're seeing now. So on the venues, we have in Mexico City, an area where we haven't really had a proper league event, we have 100-seat theater in Mexico City. In New York, we have, it's not Madison Square Garden, it's at a 5,000-seat theater that's essentially a convention hall theater in New York City, and that's it. And this is when they had options that they could have done with proper planning out, and that's all that they've managed to provide access to. Ticket info wasn't available until just weeks ago. Ticket sales didn't start until less than a month before the event itself, which when people want to travel, book, get time off, doesn't leave enough time for people to actually make plans around this, especially with how quickly the tickets then sold out. People couldn't have made plans beforehand. Now, this doesn't even make sense. Riot has made the decision over the past few years that they want to turn League esports into a business instead of just a loss leader, which they were treating it like early on in esports. And now, how are you making these decisions that are fundamentally reducing the profitability of your business? You could be selling out tens of thousands of tickets in these places. You have these fixed costs of production, networking. These things don't change based on the number of fans you have in the arenas. And yet, and yes, you can sell out this many tickets, considering that they sold out of the tickets that they did provide nearly instantly. So why are you settling for at best breaking even when you could actually be providing money? And that's putting aside how much they're laying down NA fans. This has been 6 years now since there's been a Worlds in NA, and this is what we're getting. I don't know. To end this, I'm not being salty about this. I got exactly the tickets I want. This is so convenient for me. And yet still, I'm pissed off about how much of a shit show this is turning into for all the fans in NA who wanted to just see this stuff happen.
Actually, in the chat we have IFL Stream who says boring topic, and I'm curious because I've seen this sentiment a little bit before. Why do people think this is a boring topic? Because I actually think it's like, maybe some people think it's only relevant to them if they would go to one of these events, but I don't know. I think it's a pretty big deal. Oh, that person's a troll, you're saying? Okay, never.
Well, here's what I'll say. It's Bedge because I don't care. I want to talk about League of Legends, not event planning, Travis. If I want to talk about event planning, I'd watch an event planning.
You sound like a Reddit mod right now, Mark.
Show.
This is League of Legends. It's the League of Legends World Championship.
Yeah, it's not related to League of Legends. My interest. This is events planning 101. Don't you see? So it's not interesting.
So yeah, you're only giving ammo to this rando in the chat. Okay, so a couple of different things here. Worth noting that the play-ins is happening in a studio. Like, basically, they've always done, well, I don't know, in most recent years, barring COVID, they have done them in, like, the LEC studio, or I think LCK studio had it at one point in time whenever it was in Korea. So normally these things are in studios. In one sense, it shouldn't be that surprising that play-ins is happening in a studio. I think they're...
On the other hand, they're going to a new content
Yeah,
that
so
they
that's
haven't
what I
done
was
before.
that's what I was going to say, is that actually it's very weird because their mistake, what they should have done, if they were not going to go big in Mexico or LATAM, they should have just done it in the LCS studio. Like, it is such a disingenuous thing to be like, hey guys, we're bringing Worlds to Mexico, and it's going to be a 100-person arena, right? Like, it's our studio. It's tough because it's like, at that point in time, what is, and they can theme it. Maybe the whole idea is that they're going to try to really theme it so that it feels like it's bringing in some of the LATAM esports flavor or something like that. But like, it just feels like a bit of a bait in the switch. I feel like I feel like LATAM fans would be less angry if you had just done it in the LCS studio, because they would have been like, oh, okay, well, we weren't expecting it at World stuff. Instead, you've given them a reason to be angry by doing it this way, which is very ironic. And yeah, it's about 100 or 130 seats. And from what I saw, I had people tweeting pictures at me.
I saw some pictures. Yeah,
it doesn't look like they're actually seats. They're more like benches and stuff. So it's a little, I don't know.
It's like, it looks like one of those kind of like museum theaters where you just kind of stand there or sit on like pads. You know, it's not really like a thing, it seems like.
Yeah. So I think that's weird. I don't really blame them as much for the New York thing for groups and court. I guess maybe you could say like, oh, they should have found something different for quarters. But I don't, like, groups has always been in a smaller arena regardless of the world. I think part of the challenge is just they have to do 12 days of shows in a, like, I don't know, 16-day period or something along those lines.
Absolutely.
20?
Can I give my thoughts on that?
Yeah, go for it. Sure.
So that is a big problem because we're in peak North American, or America in particular, sports season with football, basketball, baseball, NHL all going on right now. However, you have, just in New York, in Queens, Arthur Ashe Stadium. It hosted the Fortnite World Cup, so it has the networking infrastructure, presumably, to do this. It's a 24,000-seat arena.
You cannot sell out 24,000 seats for 8 days.
But you don't need to do that. They've previously done larger places where they've closed off the upper thing. For instance, when they did TD Bank North Garden for the NA Finals, they closed off the seeing where they didn't have to do it so that they weren't trying to sell out a full arena. And then you can do a 10,000-seat arena that's not just a theater setting, where we know that it's not booked because it doesn't have any bookings up till then, especially if you did it a year in advance, like the Riot's events team should be doing for these kinds of planning. Then you could have actually got something like this set up.
Yeah, I don't know. I can see reasons why not, right? Like, maybe you have to spend enough money to get a 24,000 person arena, which is bigger even than the LCS arena that we were just in for finals in Chicago. And so, like, if you only think you can sell out, I don't know, 7,000, 8,000 tickets.
If they're not currently selling events right now, which means that stadium isn't making them money, how much do you think that they're
neither of us are
events
people, and so we don't really know what it costs to rent out an arena that's going to sit empty. So I can understand, but I will say it is. I think it's fair for fans to be disappointed that they chose such a small arena like Hulu Theater. I can understand why they did, but I think it's fair for fans to be disappointed, and I wonder what their options were. Like, maybe they should have gone outside of the New York market, even though it feels very prestigious to be doing it in New York. Maybe they should have done it in New Jersey, which is probably cheaper, or
you have Red Bull, which might have been an option there, though you have other issues potentially. Yeah, there were other options available to them.
Yeah. So, and then you talked about the ticketing issues. I think that's like actually batshit crazy that it took so long for them to do that. And so I agree with you there. So yeah, I mean, I would say it is a very tough situation, right? Because I actually think Worlds in North America this year should feel really cool, right? Like, you've got Lil Nas X on board. I'm sure that, like, their arena for finals is Chase Center, I think is what it's called. It's Chase something, Chase Arena, Chase Stadium, and it is like basically brand new. It's where the NBA Finals were. So like it's this weird kind of dichotomy of Worlds is going to be awesome, but also Worlds is got all these issues that I think can make fans frustrated, even though I expect the experience of Worlds to still feel really great this year.
Let me just throw something out, though. Which
yeah.
has been more hype over the last few years? Group stage or quarterfinals, semifinals?
Probably depends on the region that you're talking to. I'm sure.
Okay, fair.
I'm sure
from a North American
Fnatic fans felt really great going into 2018.
From a North American perspective, Wallace and NA.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because Mark and I were talking about this earlier today as we were planning on stuff. Like, I actually think the first part of groups is usually like the most hype part of Worlds, in some sense, because you oftentimes get kind of stomps in the late game stuff, or you get like LPL matches. I mean, this all goes into the format stuff, right? But like, I agree that like I was surprised, for instance, David in the chat.
It's not that hard, brother.
We don't really know. Like, the reason I do this is because when I mispronounce it, he always makes a TikTok about it, and then he tags me, and so that's actually just a way for me to siphon TikTok. Anyway, he was commenting on the fact that quarterfinals sells out faster than group stage, which is very surprising to me because you would think group stage would be more. If I had to choose one day of quarterfinals or one day of group stage, I would choose group stage.
I think so. Like, I agree. I actually do think it's better, but I think that there is some sort of narrative weight behind these things that make them higher viewership as well. Like, usually peak viewership is not in group stage. It's usually at World Finals. It's usually, other matches. It generally trends up over the tournament as like things get higher stakes. And so while I agree from an entertainment perspective, especially from a North American perspective, groups is the best. But I think, unfortunately, I can see why you wouldn't make groups the biggest part of like a physical event. You would do that for the, like you guys are saying, finals and stuff.
Yeah. I think that's right.
Global peak viewership. Like, if you add up all the numbers.
That's fair, but the in-person viewership where you get to see the NA teams and the NA fans going to see the NA teams.
Yeah. Well, so I think even the fact that groups sold out fast, or excuse me, quarters sold out faster than groups, as Travis said, speaks to the fact that people just care about knockouts and things like that. That it sounds cooler, even if, you're going to have a better time. Like, things are going to be crazier for sure in group stage.
So there was actually a person in the chat that said, will there be watch parties? This is Sunmix. Said, will there be watch parties around New York City Worlds if we don't get in? I hope so. I'm hopeful that there's going to be a lot of cool stuff. We're trying to figure some stuff out for New York. So I would stay tuned for that. But anyway, I guess to sum it up, I've been talking for weeks about trying to make a video about this, and I just haven't had the time. But I do agree, Sevinon, and I think that the linchpin of my argument in the video I want to make is like, this is not a lot of the things you talked about kind of defy Riot's like central value, which is players first, or being very player focused. And I know people probably meme on that because there are times where they're going to like raise the cost of skins, and that's like, but usually in situations where it's not about them trying to directly like increase their bottom line, they do make the better decision for fans, like communicating to them about stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And around all this stuff, they've just completely failed at that. And they failed at it for years. And for years, they've said they're going to get better about this, and then they never do. So it's like, it's one of those things that makes sense to keep sort of beating the drum on, but it's also just shocking how far they miss their own values and the way that they approach a lot of the stuff around Worlds every year. And like, it would be way easier to excuse this stuff post-COVID, like in their first year back after COVID, if they hadn't fucked it up so many times before. So that's kind of where I'm at. Anyway, we're going to go on to the next call, but anything that you want to shout out before we take a break?
No, thanks for putting on the show, and also LCS greater than PCS, what's up with the seeding?
Boom. Thank you so much for the call. We'll catch you next time. All right. We're going to take a quick break to talk about Alienware. So they have some new monitors that are available on their site right now, which you can get by going to alienware.com/Travis. And if you purchase through there, it's actually very helpful for me. But they have a new 25-inch gaming monitor, and they have actually, I'm trying to find the link. Maybe I'm secretly mentioning something that I shouldn't be right now. I'm seeing if I can pull it up. But regardless, they've got 2 new monitors hitting right now that are super, super cool. One of them very much oriented towards the sort of high-end gaming esports world in terms of high refresh rate stuff. 25 and a 27-inch monitor. And both of those are over on their website, so you can go take a look again at alienware.com/Travis. But new stuff dropping from Alienware all the time. This is just an example of it. So thank you so much to Alienware for sponsoring the show. Please go check out their new monitors. And Worlds, we're trying to do some cool stuff at Worlds. Thank you to Alienware for helping get us there. And please support the channel if you feel like buying an Alienware product by going to alienware.com/Travis and buying through that link. They'll be able to track ad blocker sometimes breaks it, so maybe that'll screw it. But most of the time they can track it through there. So thank you so much for Alienware for sponsoring the show. Okay, we are off to grab the next caller. Mark's already there. Thank you to Etherealized for the sub and Norvek for the sub. If you're just showing up now, we are trying to raise money for Women in Games International. So you can Twitch has a built-in charity functionality around all the stuff, so you can just click the buttons if you're on the page.
Hello.
Mike Spam is here. Mike Spam, where are you calling from?
Seattle.
What do you want to talk about on the show?
We don't know. You polled him, and he posted 2 things.
Why did you post 2 things?
This is what people do, Travis.
I posted the first one, then I thought of a better one.
Is it about CoreJJ being let go?
It's about CoreJJ. Mike Spam, what's your CoreJJ take?
I think cutting CoreJJ is the correct move from TL, and if they want to really have a forward-looking decision, that's where they should go.
Okay, why?
Simply put, because I think CoreJJ is a vehicle for TL winning games, indisputably really important. I think TL winning games is sort of born out to not be what's gonna be long-term successful for TL after this year, and they need to pivot towards talent development, right? I think they've said it. I think most people agree that's a pretty smart move to take. And if you're pivoting towards talent development, you don't need CoreJJ on a talent development roster.
So, a couple things. I already see, coaches and GMs in chat having aneurysms. I think we've done our best to try to convey this, but maybe I've dropped the ball a little bit. CoreJJ's contract is ending, so it's not necessarily a situation like TL might not have it's not TL's decision. I know Mark, you mentioned this. I mean, it's not entirely TL's decision. Mark mentioned this in the blame game that he did this past week. You did it. You want to tell people what your blame game is if they missed it?
If you missed it, it's basically me just saying, CoreJJ versus Bjergsen after Travis's leaky deaky about them not getting along and how.
Again, no, it's not that they didn't get along. Because this is the. I know you're memeing me right now. People actually believe this. Team Liquid dropped a video last week of the 2 of them together in the video, and people were adding me, trying to be like, "No, see, Travis, they don't hate each other." That's not it. All I'm saying is they understand the game differently. They view the game differently. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, oftentimes analysts behind the scenes, when we talk about players not getting along, we mean in game, not out of game. Usually, if it's out of game, we'll specify like they personally don't like each other or something like that. But yeah, they see the game differently. And the thing is just that Bjergsen is signed for another year. CoreJJ is not. And so in order to convince CoreJJ to come back, presumably that means Bjergsen can't be there, which means you have to do all this stuff to get him out of the way. And at the same time, you also have Ayla and Academy, who everyone wants to see in LCS next year. And so there's just logistically a lot of reasons that CoreJJ himself might walk, or Team Liquid might not offer him a contract. Technically not cutting, but I think in the spirit of the call, TL organizationally decide to move in another direction, even if CoreJJ wouldn't have come back.
Yeah, I think when you have topics like this, having to hedge it with the player might not decide to sign is no fun for anyone, because you can't really get inside CoreJJ's head and know how he feels about the thought of re-signing with TL as an org. So I think it's worth just setting aside for the topic of discussion.
So I don't know how you feel, Travis, but I said that I still like CoreJJ a lot. If I had a blind pick with no other of these stipulations, I would probably pick Core over Bjerg. But
We had a conversation a while ago. This was before this became a thing, because everybody's been kind of comparing Vulcan or Core, and there's some people that go on Twitter and they're like, oh my god, and by the way, I love Vulcan, but they're like, oh my god, why does Core get so much attention? Vulcan's the superior support. But I feel like if you asked most GMs and players, like if you were building a team from scratch, who's the first? Like, who would you go to first for support if you had no limits? And they would, I think, usually say Core is my.
They might even say him for just like straight up players, like
yeah.
A lot of players like Bjerg wanted to play with Core for a reason, even though it didn't work out.
Yeah.
The thing I'll say though to Mike Spam a little bit is I don't think that developing roster and having talent that is not at its ceiling necessitates not having veterans. I absolutely believe in a world where you pair CoreJJ with someone like Tactical. Back in the day, though, obviously that didn't last long term, but like a developing young player with CoreJJ to ease their transition into professional play and help them level up. This is something I firmly believe is the correct way to introduce rookies into the LCS. And so I don't like 5 development players. And you can still be a top team, as EG showed, winning Spring, making Worlds, with still taking a couple risks. And I think it's those smart risks that you should try and take. Like JoJo was the hottest young mid lane talent probably ever from North America. And they took a little risk on him, worked out. And I think that those are things you can do. So I don't think just because like you have to dump CoreJJ to go move talent development. But overall,
I agree. To me, the question's always been, well, since your video, right? It's Bjergsen versus CoreJJ, right? Which path is TL gonna take? I think you get rid of CoreJJ, you keep Bjergsen, not as an indictment against CoreJJ. I would say, from my perspective, he is the best support in the league. I don't think you need the best support in the league for the direction TL should start to head.
What about Bjergsen in mid lane?
The thing about Bjergsen in mid lane, setting aside the brand factor, right, is I think Bjergsen is good enough to where you can start testing people in other positions around him, right? Because
is Core not good enough that you could test people in positions around him?
I mean, you can, but what are the positions you'd want to test around for CoreJJ? Like, this is a genuine question. Like, what mid laners are you thinking if you want to turn TL into a development roster where you're like, here are these mid lane talents that I think TL should pick up and start to develop?
Gotcha.
Yeah, so like I think there is a concern that I think the community somewhat have around Bjergsen's play style. I really don't have a problem with it domestically, and I think people underrate domestic success quite a bit. I think you can, talk about Bjerg never getting out of Worlds groups except for 2014. That was the only time he ever got out of groups. Right? No. They actually got out of groups.
Oh, right. I was thinking of C9.
2013. No, they both got out of groups then. That was the best year North America ever technically had at Worlds, you could argue, in terms of 2 teams getting out. But the thing is, that was a long time ago, and that was during the peak of Bjergsen's dominance, and he hasn't done it since then at MSI or at Worlds. So I do understand some of the community's concern about like turning towards the future with a player whose play style does not seem to work at Worlds. But again, I think that's putting the cart before the horse a little bit. Like if you have Santorum Bjergsen sticking around, let's say that's a really strong mid-jungle core to help out younger side laners if they go with Ayla and Yon.
I don't think it would be mid-jungle core in this scenario, though, right? Because they wouldn't have core.
Go fuck yourself.
Did I derail your thought process, Mark?
No, I pretty much ended the thought process that
okay.
It's a very solid backbone for a like developing but still competent lineup.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I disagree with your take, Mike Spam, because you're basically like, this is like the best path forward for them. I think because this is what they want to do. I think it might be the best path forward for them because like if they're going to core right now and offering to re-sign him early, and he's like, no, I want to test free agency or something, which is I feel probably pretty likely. Like it's probably not worth your time to be like, okay, well wait around and hope that Core makes it. Like, given that he seems to be heading into free agency, and you're already thinking about rebuilding, and you're probably trying to cut budget and all this stuff, like, that's why I think it kind of makes sense. I think it feels
Here's my
really.
trap card, Travis.
Yeah.
What was the last great result TL had with CoreJJ? The last great result. Not
2019
success.
MSI, because they had beat Doublelift. Doublelift did that.
But my point is just like, again, CoreJJ, amazing player, but I think people have taken his amazingness in game and used that to overshadow the fact that TL has not had amazing results domestically or internationally with him. They've had really good results, but not amazing results.
Yeah, I know, but I kind of hate this. Like, people do this kind of weird, I don't know if it's revisionist history or something like that, where it's like you can have an amazing player stuck on a bottom tier team, and if that team's not performing well, like, that's maybe not the amazing player's fault, right? Like,
right, I agree. I'm not saying it's
you've had a lot of examples of players like who he lifted trophies on 100T after being on shit teams for a while. So I don't know. I don't like it whenever people look at Core and they're like, yeah, but TL hasn't won recently, and I'm like, yeah, but how many times was the like retrospective on TL at the end of a season where they didn't win, like, and it's because of that fucking CoreJJ guy just sitting down there inting like he's the problem. I get annoyed.
Here's what I'll say as like the olive branch is, like, I can agree with the take, Mike Spam, that the best thing for them to do moving forward for the organization is to let Core go. I can buy that. I just don't think we need to pretend like he hasn't been number one, number two, best support, maybe best player in the LCS for his time until this year. Yeah. And this year, everyone on Team Liquid.
Those are not incompatible takes. You can hold those two ideas, believe them completely. They don't contradict each other.
Yeah. And this year, obviously, he struggled more individually, but I think everyone on that team did. And that was one of the other things I said in the blame game is, like, it's hard to evaluate how good these players are when they clearly dominate early game and in scrims, and everyone knows that they're insano players, but then they struggle so much on stage in mid to late game situations. So, like, in that sense, I'm not going to call anyone on this team like washed or anything. It's just like was clearly less than the sum of their parts.
Mike Spam, thanks so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we go on to the opposing viewpoint from Achilles?
I'm very interested to see how that conversation goes. That's all.
How what goes?
I said how that conversation goes.
Oh, the next one. Okay.
Yes.
Well, tune in and find out right now.
I
all
will.
Right. Thank Mike Spam. Catch you later.
Peace.
Okay, yeah. So Achilles, who was having an aneurysm in the chat, is in the waiting room right now, which is maybe a bad thing for me to do, but okay. Let's see, where are we? Fartmaster Blaster, Yashin, Kylo Zen, Zeps donated to the charity, to our charity initiative, as so did Glarung. Thank you, both of you. Kanoke, Maury Wakes, thank you for the subs. Again, thank you to everybody who's donating to the charity and the fundraiser. It's really cool to see. We're already at $520, which was my initial goal was 500, but let's see if we can get to 1,000. I've upped the goal. Pray I don't alter or up it again, or maybe you do if you want money. I don't know. I'm stalling for Mark. He's taking a larger amount of time.
His microphone is not working. Apparently, he was spending too long being a keyboard warrior, not enough time setting up.
Well, maybe he'll get his mic working later on. You want to grab the next person then? Somebody else? Off he goes. Okay. The irony. I'm sorry, Achilles. I'm not trying to be a dick. If you're listening to this, I'm sure it's very frustrating. You put a lot of effort into your thing. You wanted to get on the show, and now your mic's not working. Might I recommend an Alienware headset at alienware.com/Travis? Might be a good idea. So, yeah. If you're listening to this right now, please open TikTok and go follow me at Travis Gafford. Trying to actually get TikTok followers, and it's been difficult, but a lot of my videos are popping off lately. Okay, robtron is here. robtron, where are you calling from?
Calling from Calgary, Alberta.
Calgary, Alberta. What do you want to talk about on the show?
We don't know again. He posted 2 takes, Travis. Which one do you want?
Oh, my God.
So I'm pretty sure it's the take where if people were LCS players or LCS viewers, pardon me, don't ultimately care about a player's performance, but rather they care about the narrative behind the player.
Wait, I thought yours was about import stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so go ahead and yes, it was that, but go ahead and elaborate. Robtron.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, just getting my notes on because
You're good.
as you can tell, I'm nervous.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great. We're all here for you.
Travis is trolling you. You're doing great.
So yeah, LCS viewers don't ultimately care whether a player is an import or not. They just care for players that they feel invested in. So for example, our champions, C9, have a singular domestic talent. But everyone else on that team, save Berserker, who hasn't had a chance yet, but it's already turning out for him, have either been around for some time or have actually made considerable effort to leave a mark. On the other hand, looking at TL, with Hans leaving, nobody cares, right? And you could chalk that up to performance, but I think it has a lot more to do with the fact that people didn't feel invested in his performance whatsoever.
Yes. So, sorry, your C9 point, if you could just elaborate a little bit more on that. You're saying people care about them because they've had success or because they've been here for a while? Or a third thing I missed?
I mean, obviously success is a big part of it, and you can't take that away as a factor in why, people might be fond of players on a team.
Yes.
But the fact that our domestic champions have one single domestic talent, and that never really seems to be part of the conversation outside of like EU West players saying KEKW, it kind of shows that really the people care more about the fact that they know who, Fudge is, they know who Jensen is, they know who Sven is, and not so much the fact that they came from somewhere.
So
go ahead.
Oh, no, Mark, I started last time, and I've got I pulled this so I could alley-oop on it. So you should go first.
Are you alley-ooping to say you disagree?
I am alley-ooping. Just go ahead.
Okay, you're serving yourself up off the backboard is what you're doing. I got you. So I 100% agree with this take as well, and I might steal some of your thunder here. I think this is actually a great topic that I hadn't thought about as a team that's kind of like the anti-import team, because people always talk about like 100 Thieves, or Team Liquid, but they don't always have the greatest narrative draw to them. And I think that's ultimately what you're talking about here. Is there's not like a single unifying thing. Like Jensen's been here forever. Fudge has had it's only 2 years, but he's kind of had his come up here. His glow up has been in North America. Blabber's obviously super NA. Sven's been here forever, and Berserker is kind of having his come up as well. And people are gravitating towards his personality, which is really good, and his play is really good. There's like this triangle of like those what they call radar charts about like how well you're fulfilling the three things. There's like skill, maybe like personality, and then like narrative as its own thing. Because the problem that I think Hans had is he's actually a kind of nice guy. He can be pretty funny. I think his personality is fine. His skill is not that bad, but it was just really hard to tell a story about Hans that felt compelling. What was Hans's story this year? Joins NA Super Team to dunk on region, doesn't do it, doesn't look great. It's just really hard to find a way to talk about him easily on broadcast. Whereas Berserker, it's like hottest young prospect from the 80 carry position, sniped out to join C9. How's he doing? You can check in on him. He can start low, get high, have ups and downs. He's a rookie player, like these kinds of things. And it was just very easy to tell stories around Berserker for that reason. And, it's no fault of Hans necessarily that his career is more established, but, it's just not a sexy story of what once was a great EU player coming over, and I don't even think Hans necessarily to get to the personality part of it. Like, I don't think Hans outperformed to use the sense like Berserker. Berserker was really charismatic and a fun guy to root for. So and he was better than Hans. So in that pie chart thing, that radar graph, it's like, yeah, that's what fans ultimately care about is how well they can connect with you. And C9 has been great.
Counterpoint, Mark. Shouldn't the radar chart be pretty full for Perks? And how many people seem to care when Perks left?
I think people actually did get pretty mad that Perks left.
Oh, that was not my impression at all. I feel like people were just sort of like, they collectively shrugged whenever he left.
It's
of
hard
course
for me
now
to
the 3 people in chat that did are going to say that they did. But it did not seem like people were angry that he left or upset or anything like that. It seemed like people were mostly like, whatever.
It seems pretty divisive in chat right now. Some people cared a lot, some people didn't care. I I think his performance was not like he came over. He's talking about how he's going to dominate and elevate North America, and like I don't know, it seemed always a little facetious. I think people could kind of pick up on that. I don't know, but I think the narrative storyline, again, to that point, Travis, is harder to tell about Perkz as like arguably the greatest EU player ever. Him and Caps go kind of 1-2. Comes to North America, is good. Not clearly the best player ever in North America. You know, like he wasn't just shitting on the region, and so it's like, well. You know, he went to Worlds. He had the best performance out of teams at Worlds. You know,
I mean, that's kind of what I mean. Is like, it feels like he's got a strong personality. Like the broadcast certainly felt like he was a good enough person to build narrative around. That they did a lot with him. I mean, he was featured pretty prominently in that the summer finals video. By the way, we have a poll going in the chat right now to see. It should be on the Twitch chat if you guys want to see if you want to vote in about it. But anyway, yeah. And then his results were good. So, like, that's why I think he's kind of the counterpoint a bit. So, I don't know. It seems like most people say no, but more people than I expected are saying yes.
It's like 40 to 60%, which I guess you would expect with how many people are even C9 fans to begin with that year, still commenting right now. So,
yeah. I think, so, here's kind of my take. I would like to see the LCS do less importing. I will say that now, officially, as I've thought more and more about it. And I think there's a difference between being anti-importing and anti-imports. Because whenever you say, like, oh, you know, I wish the league had less imports or something like that, people tend to take it very personally, right? They're like, how dare you say that about Jensen? I love that man, and he's more North American than anybody else. And it's really easy to do that. But what about Summit as a good example? MVP of Spring. So I think here's the main thesis. And I need to make another video about this. So many videos on a list that I need to get to sometime. But here's the main reason to feel like the main argument against LCS teams importing players. The main argument is how many of these players boomerang out of the league. And we have seen it time and time again. Hansama is a great example of it. I don't know if Whippo is going to be here next year. We're going to find out. But he's also a really big name that just got signed and might be here for 1 year. Summit in the spring. Perkz and Alfari and Sword Art. How many times do we have players come over and take spots on huge teams at the top of the league and then leave immediately? And then in some cases get replaced again with another player who immediately leaves. And this happens on the top and the bottom, right? Like I assume that, for instance, Blue might not be. This is not because I've heard anything, but like, you know, I would not be surprised to see that player not on a team. Now, this is in contrast to North American players who actually stay in the league and for long periods of time, and maybe they drop down to academy for a little bit, but then they come back, and so. What you end up happening or occurring is this league where we need to get where you go and you see all these comments all the time about people saying like, I don't care about the players in the league. I don't know these players in the league. You can look at it on the video that I did about the pop quiz around like old items, because a bunch of former league players or former LCS watchers came in there and they're like, man, I just know nobody here, or like, I don't know. And part of it is because we have players come over and then leave, and they're usually like the biggest names are going to the biggest teams. So I think about this a little bit. Like, what if instead of let's say Whippo does not stay in North America, what if instead of Whippo and Alfari, TL had made a bet on, say, Revenge as an example, or insert any other North American top laner here, right? But they make a bet on Revenge, and instead of Revenge being stuck on Immortals, where like there's no hope of success because they're just not investing in the infrastructure that they need to, he ends up getting kind of like a tactical style moment. Maybe a bad example since everybody's anti-tactical right now, but like it's a up and coming player put on a good team where like they can learn a lot and start to level up. Maybe there's a world where Revenge would have actually seen 2 years worth of play, actually start to become a pretty well known player. And even if he doesn't stay on TL because maybe they're like, we didn't get the results that we want, he might end up on like a middle tier team, and people might know Revenge more. I mean, he's already built a decent brand for himself being on one of the bottom teams. And so this is kind of like the thesis of my argument, which is like, it is not that, oh, these players from, like, some people will try to accuse you of xenophobia or something like that. It's not a situation where it's like, oh, we don't want these other people coming to North America and like taking jobs or something like that. It's more like the ecosystem has demonstrated that a huge amount of these players will churn out of the league, including really big names on really big teams. And like all the effort that goes in throughout the year into brand building and making people care about these players and all that stuff immediately goes out the fucking window. And instead you have players that are on the bottom side of the league that could potentially find a lot of success and be a mainstay in the league that never really get the chance that they could, because there's so many teams that are like salivating for the next big name who will come over here and potentially flop.
I think that's fair, and I'll say that I'm someone who's a really big fan of NA talent, and I follow, all the underleagues as best that I can. But I'll say that ultimately the buck falls at the feet of the organizations to control the narrative of that surrounds these players. So you had mentioned Perks as an example, and I'll actually mention another example in the form of Spica. And going along with your Summit example, all three of those players had a background noise around them that they wanted to leave, right? Like Doublelift at the beginning of the season saying on stream, "1 more year, Ming." And Perks obviously not really appearing that stoked to be playing for Cloud9 despite the massive paycheck. And Summit having so much negative conversation around him as a player despite being the MVP. What was Cloud9 doing in the case of both Perks and Summit, controlling that narrative so that they could be more secure in enabling themselves to build a healthier narrative around their players, import or otherwise? So to take an example for a Revenge, I really honestly think that Immortals is trying to not enough of an extent, but trying to shape a positive narrative around Revenge. An example of an organization that is doing this even better is FlyQuest, firmly middle of the pack all year, and Jose Dioto and Takuli have become fan favorites because FlyQuest has invested in content and in telling their stories really, really well. So while I really wish that we had more NA talents, the orgs need to be responsible for controlling that narrative, because that narrative will trump, as my original thesis was, that narrative will trump their performance.
Yeah, I mean, in some cases, like I think what often happens is you end up with like people. FlyQuest is an exception to the rule when it comes to people watching their content, and I think that I would guess that the demo for a lot of that content is outside of North America, and so I'm a little skeptical on the like.
Where else are new viewers going to come from?
Well, within North America, there's a lot of people in North America that don't watch
going?
LCS.
Well, I mean, that's the bigger question about how the product's doing, which actually I have a take about that later. No spoilers.
Yeah. I just don't. Yeah, I don't think that the solution to the LCS viewership problem is to try to pull people. So, anyway, we have to. We're running out of time, unfortunately. But thank you so much, Robtron, for the call. Anything you want to shout out?
Hey, I really appreciate it. Shout out to my bros, Jake and Everett, and of course my wife. And lastly, follow Esports Can't Cook on Twitter. Thanks, Alienware and Grubhub.
Oh, is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh yeah. I've seen that Twitter account. It's a good one. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark, you want to grab the next caller?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you to Maury Wakes, Aerohydrus for 28 months. That's pretty good. And then Papyr. Thank you, everybody, for the subs. Just want to give a shout out again. You can do !charity in the chat if you want to learn a little bit more about it. But on Twitch, if you're watching on Twitch, there's a bunch of buttons all over the place to donate to our fundraiser that we're doing for Women in Games International. So AchillesZeus has fixed their microphone and has screamed in the Twitch chat often enough to anger people, but has made it on the show. Achilles, where are you calling from?
I didn't know I got pulled in yet.
Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from East Rutherford, New Jersey.
East Rutherford, New Jersey. All right. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Okay, so I had 2 takes, but the first take I did the most work on, which is going off what you said last week for TL. you said that mid and support didn't see the game the same way, and I think the best way to handle that is to pull in a coach who has like a certain way of seeing things so that the two players can't argue with each other and it kind of has to like follow the coach because they had their chance to like shine and do what they felt was best for the team and it didn't work out. I think if you bring in a coach with a good following, it also boosts sponsorship. And so the coach I'm thinking of is like LS because he has a huge sponsorship and that should like he has a huge sponsorship already and he has a huge like background with like a lot of following. So that should actually help bring up the viewership and have more funds going towards TL because they like to spend a lot. Also, I think you should bring in, I know everyone's gonna flame me for it, Doublelift. My reason behind it is because now you have a quad synergy because like 100 Thieves, no one thought 100 Thieves was gonna be well. And because of their synergy, they ended up being really, really well. So I think if you bring in Doublelift, the synergy between the 4 players is really well. And then you keep Whippo for his next year. Yes, he had a bad year, and so did CoreJJ, but it is what it is. Everyone has a slump, and I think you bring them. You keep Whippo for his flex picks and his brand value too, because he has a good following as well.
Mark, who do you think murders the other one first, LS or Peter?
Oh, I don't know. I think Peter might.
No, I was sorry,
okay
Achilles. I was asking Mark this question.
Oh, my apologies.
I don't think he was paying attention.
No, I wasn't. What was the question? I heard Peter and LS on.
Oh my God! What were you doing instead?
I was listening intently, but then I didn't hear your question.
Oh, I was saying
which
who
one's gonna
murders
kill
each other first, LS
Yeah.
or Peter, if they're on the same team. Like that is perhaps. It's hard to think of more explosive scenarios you could put into a.
I will say I don't know how much Doublelift is still working out. LS was looking kind of strapped in kind of yoked in one of the LS.
Oh, you're saying so?
YouTube
You think
channels I was
LS
watching
might be able to take Peter in a fight?
No, I'm not sure, but I think it would be a really good piece of content with how popular influencer boxing matches are now. To like when it gets to breaking point, instead of filming a documentary, you just have a show match. No idea who would win that fight. We'll have to ask Doublelift at some point.
Okay, so
if he thinks he could take him.
AchillesZeus's take is kind of. Oh, but did you say a jungle position in this lineup? I think you said everything else, right, Achilles?
If I'm not mistaken, doesn't Santorin and DL have synergy together? Didn't they play like on a team together?
Oh, okay, good, gotcha.
I know.
So you want
Yeah.
Santorin still there? Okay, so
'cause isn't his contract not up yet?
Achilles is promoting a Bwipo, Santorin, Bjergsen, Doublelift, CoreJJ team, sponsored or coached by LS, which might be just one of the only ways that you could make an even more expensive roster than what we saw this past year from TL. Mark, thoughts on that roster?
Sounds great. Never gonna happen. This would be the exact opposite of what Steve said in his message about
Sure,
TL
but
going to the future.
we're not talking about if it will or not, but do you legitimately think that that would be a good idea?
Legitimately, if you want to sell boxing matches, yes. If you want to win League of Legends games, maybe not. But you can debate which one's actually better long term. Getting all the eyeballs on your content to sell the sponsors, maybe worth it.
I don't think Achilles. Here's the thing: you seem to think that there exists out there a magical coach who has a strong enough opinion, who will just bully all these players into submission. I don't know if you paid attention to what happened with Peter the last time he was on TL for his last split, but it didn't seem as though he was interested in hearing too much from coaches who he very much disagreed with. So I don't really think that that's going to work out very well in this scenario.
Gotcha. My thing for Mark was I don't think, right? So thinking as like from an investor standpoint, if I like invested all my money in TL, looking at Steve, right? I don't think Steve should backtrack from his like true point of what he wanted this team to go on to. Because I don't think it like looks good for sponsorships. Like, hey,
I can tell you what's worse.
All this money in.
If you're an investor, I can tell you what's worse than backtracking to a cheaper roster. It's spending a ton of money on rosters that don't perform, which is what he's been doing for a while. And so, like, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sitting in the TL meetings or anything like that, but like, I would imagine Steve had to stick his neck out a lot in order to do the Bjergsen signing, and had to be like, no, guys, Worlds is in NA. We need to go all out, blah, blah, blah. I do not think that it was a fun time for him, or I would not imagine it would be a fun time for him having to talk to the people who he stuck his neck out for, or to get these players. So, like, I think it's very tough for him to go ask for more money after this, even more money. Right? So I think the opposite of what you're saying.
I appreciate the vision that Steve had about, like, I want to win Worlds and all that, but this is kind of reminiscent to when Reggie made the change for Sven and Mithy over Peter and Bio. You know, like, the eyes get a little too big, you know, end up falling down. And I think, especially, you know, I think you have to play it in the marketplace a little bit. We were just talking about the importance of PR kind of, and knowing what people are into in the moment. And right now, people are making a bigger push for younger NA talent and, like, not going for super teams. You can see the backlash that this team has had this year, which added a lot of pressure to it, which I'm sure played a part in the downfall of the team, was the just community perception of the team itself. And so I can see Steve being like, this isn't what the marketplace wants right now. This is not the kind of teams that people want to be supporting right now. And why would I build a more expensive thing that's not popular, that has a high risk of not working out if it doesn't go perfectly, you know? So I think Steve adapting and saying, like, no longer trying to sell people that he's trying to win Worlds is fine in the short term, you know? Like, I know Steve, ambition wise, is not giving up on that dream completely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Achilles, for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we go on to a quick break?
Oh, thank you for having me. A shout out to all of Travis's sponsors for having the best reporter on their team.
Thank you so much. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
All right.
You know what? For a guy who was spamming Twitch chat, he was not very obnoxious, very polite. Made his
Yeah,
points
I was a little curious to see how that would go, but
you never know.
I think he was just passionate, you know.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, like, sometimes when you get the stands for, like, big influencers and creators, you know, they can be a little zealous in their support of that person. I think he was chill.
Yes, big fan. Okay, where are we next? Oh yes, it's time for a little ad break. That's what I was, you know, I'm looking at because Mark, you guys don't know, but Mark and I spend a lot of time before every show coming up with, like, the schedule and run of show and everything. And so I was just opening up the document to make sure.
Shut up and do the read.
Grubhub is amazing. No, Grubhub is great. They brought back a code for this week for all you guys. And that code is TG Worlds, all one word. Travis Gafford, TG as in Travis Gafford, Worlds. And this code will allow you to save $5 off your order of $15 plus for the first 500 orders from September 19th to the 25th. So from now, as we record this, to the 25th, which is Sunday, you got a whole week to use this. Do me a favor, folks. If you're listening, if you are watching, whatever, please write down TG Worlds and make sure you use the Grubhub code, because it'd be really cool. We got a whole week to use this thing. Riot's not promoting any codes, so let's just slam dunk this thing. And you guys can save, again, $5 off your order of $15 plus. So thank you so much to Grubhub. And a completely unrelated note, I completely promise this is entirely, absolutely unrelated. If anybody has any suggestions for venues or places that would like to work with Mark and I on something around Worlds in New York or Atlanta, please let us know. Completely unrelated. Okay, so next up, we got a caller.
Fez is here.
Yes, Fez is here. Fez, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Gulf Shores, Alabama.
Alabama, what do you want to talk about on the show?
Want to talk about today about basically how the LCS is recruiting. Mainly, the example I'm using is Hans Sommel with along a couple, EU talents along the years. Basically, the LCS teams shouldn't buy from the LEC teams because, like, in most situations, the contracts, how they're playing it out on the LEC, is so that only the LCS can get it and not LEC teams. And a lot of these players don't want to go to the LCS as their first choice. this practice has to stop in the LCS because Hansama's like a clear example with how he wasn't very comfortable with NA. You could tell how he played and how he adapted to NA that it was not his first choice. And now that he's so quick to go back to EU, which is what you complain about so much, Travis, it's because the LCS is recruiting these talents like Perks, like Hansama, that don't want to be here unless it's their last choice.
Okay, so are you advocating for LCS to just completely stop importing any players from Europe whatsoever?
Well, not completely. Like it's a lot of these players that are held in like contract hell from these LEC teams that have like really been lucrative and smart in how they're trying to get their talent across over to us and not to their competitor in the LEC.
I don't know. To be clear, I don't know if this is a very widespread practice. Like we haven't heard too much of players being forced against their will to come to North America.
Well, I don't think it's 100% force, but I think it is. We're not their first choice. That's my biggest thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, even then, Mark, I think you're muted. Yes.
Perks was obviously that way. I heard this about Hans and even inspired a little bit about how like Rogue kind of sold them off. Is there like been a report about that like is officially?
I've
like,
never heard anything of that, so maybe we're starting a bad rumor right now.
Yeah,
by we I mean Mark.
I've seen it in other places. To be fair, I just haven't like. It's always like Reddit comments saying it and stuff, and I'm like, I don't remember an article or something.
Yeah. Well, if it was reported, then I apologize. I've missed it. Off season's been a long time ago. So, yeah. Zoomy says Mark going on the front page of Reddit right now. Yes, exactly. It'll be
whatever. The point is that like I agree with like the wanting people who come here for the right reasons. I mean, though he wasn't forced here, I think of Soaz and like someone who I don't think liked North America. He shit on it on Twitter many times before he came here. I think he's a great player. It was clear that he kind of came here because it seemed like his best bet at that point, but was not excited about it. And then he didn't play great. I think he was on a bad team. I don't not his fault or anything, but like there's a lot of people like that. So yeah, I agree with Fez's overall point, even if it's not like every single one is contract hell. It's like that player is not going to be invested in your scene. They're not going to be invested in, putting their best foot forward. They're going to be here until they can't take it anymore. Then they're out.
But you just mentioned that Inspired might have been that way, and Inspired seemed to be fairly invested.
Yeah, well, EG has also talked about like sending him a video, so I don't know if that's true. I'm just saying like both him and Hans leaving Rogue, I heard that about that like Rogue didn't want to give them to their competition kind of thing.
I guess I disagree, Fez, with a little bit of the take because I don't feel like it is as widespread as you're suggesting in terms of like us not being their first options. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe it might be a situation where we're not their first option because the other option is like Fnatic or G2 and they already have a player there, right? And so we're a better option for them than like literally the bottom rung of LEC. But that type of stuff happens in LCS all the time, right? You have a player that might end up on like a middle of the pack team because they wouldn't have been their first option, but Cloud9 was busy or something. So
we've also heard, haven't we heard plenty of times of like players in the LEC being blocked to going to this LEC team or LEC team? Or
no, this is what I'm saying. I've only heard of the like. Again, if this is happening a lot, I have missed where it's been reported, and I would, I own that, but I don't feel like I have heard of this very much. We heard it most prominently with the Carlos and Ocelots, or sorry, the Carlos and Perk stuff, but I don't think it's like a widespread thing.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's natural for
Fez. Where else have you heard this, or where are you getting the idea that it's widespread?
I think like you, I heard a lot of like rumblings last season. I think last off season with Hansama and Inspired, just like people. I mean, I really would like to get like the actual like something documented, obviously, but I mean, it's just also a big feeling that I get when I watch a lot of these players that come over from anywhere, and my biggest point is that I think if you're making these big kind of like splashes or whatever like Steve did, or even the risk that C9 took with Berserker, like the reason Berserker I think worked out really well was because there was really good scouting done by LS, and he was literally in that scene. As in, basically the other example with Hans Sama is like people just knew that he played well, but that was it. They didn't know the situation. I don't know how much TL went into it, but like I said, it just doesn't seem like these players really wanted to be here. They were just here to literally collect a paycheck, like people like meme about all the time.
I mean, I will
Like, they weren't
say
hungry.
that this kind of goes back to stuff Mark talked about a couple years ago around wanting team owners to go scout like the next, like Berserker's kind of an example of that. Like, go to a region, find a player who's like gonna be amazing, and then grab them before their home region can, versus a player who's like lifted several trophies in their home region and comes over here. And then theoretically, hopefully Berserker stays in the LCS for the next 7 years. But I feel like there's a better chance of that than like what chances were for Hans Sama doing that. So I think I can agree with you there.
Yeah, I also feel like, I mean, it feels a little disrespectful to like Hans and Inspired to just say they're here for a paycheck or whatnot. I think also some people don't know how much they're going to like or dislike North America. I know like Amazing, I think was someone, maybe it was Santorum. One of those two early TSM junglers like struggled a lot when they came here, their first split, just like mentally and stuff. So,
Well, they were on TSM.
yeah. The point being that like I don't think that everyone's just like paycheck stealers if they struggle and we're established or anything like that. Like I think Hans tried really hard. I don't think he was just like milking it or anything. But I think the broader point being that like getting people who are excited about a long-term career in your ecosystem is better than people who are on the tail end of their career for a lot of reasons, because they also will just not be there for very long. You know, like it's just even just mathematically, like someone who is going to play for 5 years versus give it their all for 2 or 3 in your ecosystem before disappearing is like obviously a better investment for the 5-year player, even if it's not all for the same team. But for like fans and stuff to start caring about that person.
Thank you so much, Fez, for the call. Anything you want to shout out?
I guess shout out Grubhub. I got nothing to shout out, so hopefully
Awesome.
they do well.
I appreciate. I'm sure Grubhub appreciates it. Thank you so much. All right, off to the next caller. Thank you to CJ Foxy for the 8 months, Sir Pico, and then thank you to Numi for donating the $5 to Women in Games International. Here's what I will say. We have a goal of $1,000, and we're at 525 right now. I will finish the goal myself if we can't finish it by the end of the show. So if you would like to help me finish it, that would be very nice, because otherwise it's going to be pretty pricey. Okay, rudiferr is here. Rudiferr, where are you calling from?
Bergen County, New Jersey.
Bergen County, New Jersey. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So a lot of people have been saying with the topic of world format changes that they want double bracket, but they don't realize what a double bracket would actually look like, because people are forgetting how seeding for a double bracket works like, especially with a 24-team format. And so especially because if you're having double elim, right, you're probably going to at least do best of 3s. And so the time investing would need to be at least similar to play-ins. So you're trying to change a whole format just to make it something similar to play-ins, and it's going to be.
And what is the role that you have with the global team?
Real quick, rudiferr, I also realized that your beta unit was actually the VCT take. I forgot what it was at first, and then I just reread it. But hopefully you can dovetail the two together about what makes VCT special too. So sorry about that.
Yeah, all good. I could definitely do that. But did you want to say?
I don't know what Travis said, to be honest.
Say the VCT thing. I was trying to say a joke, and Mark didn't care.
Well, yeah, because I was fucking up. I had to course correct.
Not so easy.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, so I guess to dovetail into that, my take on the VCT format was people who also say that they want the semi-double elim or just like the double elim similar to VCT also don't realize that the reason why it works for Valorant is because with how Valorant is as a game, the game is just more entertaining overall, and so it's just a overall better broadcasting experience for Valorant. And I think if you just try to copy paste it, you're totally ignoring the problem that I think that
Wait, so
Riot
you're
Broadcasting
saying that
has.
because it's just that the game is more entertaining and that's why the format works?
Yeah, because well, not even that, but there's
bold,
also the
bold
fact
way of
that
addressing this. Sorry, continue.
that with with double elim seeding, right? You have to start the first round with really high teams versus really low teams, where people are gonna scream competitive integrity, right? But with anyone who's watched VCT and all the international events this last year know that the parity globally is really, really strong. So even though you have like 12 plus teams going into VCT, all of those 12 plus teams are really strong. None of the games are stomps. And even if you would think that the first seed is really stronger than the 12th seed, the games don't play out like that because of how the game is as a system and the way the game is played. And so all moments of the games are entertaining, where we know that people and viewers will just tune out for like the first 15 minutes of a seed 1 versus seed 16 game in play-ins or whatever, and like group stage, and just not watch until the rest, or not even watch at all, and then just see the results.
So there's kind of a lot going on with this take, so it's a bit of a hard. There's a lot to gnaw on here. One, I don't think that you should necessarily change I don't think that the fact that there's more parity in VCT should mean that we do theoretically you would get more games, I think, that would feel close in a world where you had a double elim, because if there's a really bad mismatch between two teams when one goes down to the lower bracket, they're probably going to play a closer game or match, whereas under normal circumstances you just see them get shit on and kicked out of the tournament.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was gonna say too. Is like no matter what, when you any bracket is seeded where the highest seed plays the lowest seed. That's just how seeding works. The thing a double elim does is it doesn't instantly kill that lower seed, assuming they lose, and then you get like 6 versus 8 or 4 versus 5. You know, when normally they would play 1 and 2 or something.
Right.
And then that allows those teams to play, and like those regions, especially to your point about the regional parity not existing as well in League of Legends. That's actually, I think, a strong reason for more games and more best of 5s, is that we just don't see these rivalries. Like it's been, I forget what it was, but it was like years before there's been a best of 5 between like EU and NA at these like events. You know, it's like, it's insane how little we play each other. I think that's something that fans of both regions are hungry for. NA wants a chance to prove themselves. EU wants a chance to cement their superiority over us. And then like, we just have to like instead argue like weird win rate statistics from group stage. You know, like that's how we debate who was the better region that year.
You also just
I definitely see what you guys mean. But I think for the reason why I had the format take was because I was seeing a lot of people complaining about play-ins and how boring play-ins are. And so their immediate thing is like, oh, we don't want best of 1s in play-ins, just make it a double elim bracket. But they don't,
I haven't seen any talk about double elim for play-ins. I've mostly seen it talked about.
Yeah, I think most people want it for knockout stage of after groups.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Play-ins is its own weird thing. I quite frankly still don't know how to deal with play-ins. Like, whenever I think of any Worlds format, I basically only start thinking about it from post-play-ins on. Which is
funny because 12 of the 24 teams play in play-ins.
Yeah.
Right.
So
that becomes a problem, right? Because if you remove the majority of the teams because chat spamming remove play-ins, like what do you do with those teams? Like, do you just not invite them anymore? Do you change the format to accompany them somehow? It becomes
I don't think we want like faker styling on like the second seed team from a region that hasn't ever made it, like OS, I guess, which I guess happened at MSI or something, right? But or something similar. But I don't know how you solve for such a giant disparity in skill. So play-ins is kind of a mess, and I don't know how to approach it. But I tend to care more about what happens later on.
Yeah, I think play-ins, there's a lot of things you can do with it, but the purpose is mostly to like get down to the actual group stage where and now that they put major regions in play-ins, I think ultimately it was a kind of a good idea for viewership reasons and to like get people invested in the play-ins and what was going on, because when it was the IWC International Wildcard qualifiers, like no one cared, and they would get like 40K views, at least in English speaking like Twitch and stuff. Whereas now you're north of 100,000 easily every single time. So like I see how that was a very good product decision. But there's a lot of other things that you need to solve for too. I think there's some things that work in Valorant that you can copy though.
Yeah, I disagree that the Valorant stuff isn't something we should be looking at for inspiration. But rudiferr, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we go on to the next caller?
Just shout out to all your sponsors and hope to maybe run into you in New York.
Yeah, hope so too. Thanks so much, and hopefully catch you there.
See you.
All right, we got 2 more callers. Mark is off to grab them. Thank you to Pokemans, who donated $5 to our charity, our fundraiser, and Sev TST for the $10. If you're just getting here at the end of the show, we are trying to raise money for Women in Games International through Twitch's new software and UI. So please consider doing that before the end of the show, when I will have to spend a lot of money on that, which I will happily do. But you can help. Brandon, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Vancouver, Canada.
Vancouver. What do you want to talk about on the show?
My take is that this year's LCS broadcast is the best to date in terms of entertainment.
I wonder which one of us pulled this take. Sorry, continue.
Travis, I'm glad you're finally supporting and actually being an optimist. You lasted about like 1 week of optimism before you're back to the little esports website sucks and their communication.
Hey, the little esports website is not the LCS. That's a global
I was talking about
the
broadcast.
Yeah, I know. Let's go.
Sorry, continue. We interrupted.
That was it.
You just mean it's really good. Why do you think it's good?
Sorry, I forgot to add. And it makes for the following splits exciting to come.
Okay, why do you think it's good?
I thought that this year was really good because it felt like everyone was having fun with the production, and on top of that, the games were really good. The storylines between the teams were also really interesting, like the stuff with C9, starting off spring with a completely different roster into winning summer with a completely new one.
Oh, Mark wants me to blind all of you guys by putting a giant white Excel spreadsheet onto...
Well, now you've given them appropriate warning. They'll be able to adjust for this awesome spreadsheet that is pretty unreadable, but I'll walk everyone through it.
Classic
about
Mark
viewership
Zimmerman.
stuff to support our caller's point, who's making a great point.
I don't know if it's going to work for the same Windows Explorer issues I was having earlier, but let's see if I could make it work. Sorry, go ahead. Whatever you're going to say, Mark.
Well, it's kind of contingent on showing the graphic.
Set it up. I'm trying.
Okay, so some time ago, when the LCS is dying conversation started, was working on collecting data from like the esports chart site, because I think a lot of the times trends of viewership are influenced by a lot of factors, and I want to do like a holistic deep dive of some of those factors and map it over the years about how that's happened. And there is something interesting that has emerged at the end of this year of playoffs that hopefully any fucking second it shows up on screen that I can point out how this looks. It's an image. Just slam the image in there. There it is. Poggers. All right, sick. So, the way this works is there is the viewership, which is the raw number of the hundreds of thousands, and then the change from the year before is basically comparing it to if it's up or down from the previous year. And then there's the change from split.
Where's this data from?
To the split before. This data is from esports charts, so it's publicly available data, which means that there is a little bit of potentially like not 100% accurate to what Riot would report, but at least it's consistently from the same source and should show some general trends. And you can kind of see like issues between summer 2020 and summer 2021, for example. We lost 60% or 40% of our viewership about. That's a big problem. You also see that there was this bump in summer 2020 from spring 2020 and even from summer 2019. That's obviously the COVID bump. When COVID shut everything down, people started watching. The thing that I want to highlight here is change from split. So as you can see, every time in summer, it goes down from spring. Spring always has higher viewership than summer, except in summer 2020, which, as we identified, is the COVID bump. What's interesting is that for this year, summer 2020 from split changes is the highest of any region ever from spring to summer. It's only a 7%
And is this
dip.
average concurrent?
This is average concurrent viewership.
Okay.
If you can see in that second row, the change from the split is only a 93% dip, or excuse me, a 7% dip, containing 93% of the viewership from spring. And if you look at everything else, including LEC, that is higher than any other thing. And so while it's still going down, it's actually reversed the trend in that sense where it's positive. Now, there are a lot of factors to this beyond just like the broadcast was fucking perfect. You can talk about the importance of how many best of fives we actually had in playoffs, which drive viewership up immensely. Best of fives, the fifth game will always have higher viewership. It trends up. We had a ton of those. That was a huge factor in it. But I also do think the broadcast being genuinely significantly better than recent years for the LCS has started to turn people's opinion around. And I think it is significant to point this out because there has been this conversation the LCS is dying and, you know, people have their opinions on what's making it go right or wrong. But at the very least, you have some data you can point to and go, this is the best spring to summer retention rate we have ever had. Part of that's because spring started so fucking bad. That's another thing to consider too. But at the very least, the people have stuck around. That's why I appreciate the take. And people, the sentiment has changed, I think, a fair amount on Reddit and whatnot, where and it was the laughing stock. A lot of people seem to be enjoying it now. And I just, for people who sometimes hear all the doom and gloom from different sources because they don't actually look at the data or whatever, like, if you look at the data, it's starting to look better. So yeah, I agree with the caller. I think it was a good split. I think it was a lot of fun.
You have not sold Twitch chat. They just keep looking at the fact that it's our lowest viewed split of all time.
Thank you. Thank you for agreeing with my take. I usually don't look at the numbers, nor do I really care about it. But I used to watch LCS when it first started, and then I kind of watched it here and there, depending on the players that I was following. But for the past couple of years, I kind of just turned it off. But this year it was different, and it felt like everyone on the broadcast was having more fun. Usually, in between games, I would turn off the analyst segments, but this year it was I could stay engaged throughout the whole broadcast and not feel kind of bored. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I still turn off whenever the analysts come on. I just
no
get
one
that out
asked
of there.
you.
Me too. I'm actually have them muted. I have an earpiece in and it's just playing music when I'm no. So I saw some people in chat, like you said, Travis, about this being the lowest split for LCS. True, but only because we had the worst spring ever, whereas summer has actually had the best retention rate, like I said. And if you want the copium angle, LEC had worse splits. Summer 2017 for LEC was at 100,000, 103,000, you know? Summer 2018 for them, 117,000. Doing much better now. So these things do go up and down quite a bit. And when I was talking about the environmental factors, that's when EU LCS became LEC and kind of saved what was happening in that region. So, there's a lot of interesting stuff to dig into there that is beyond the scope of this call, but just giving some hopium for people. I'm doling out the hopium.
Brandon, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we...
Shout out to you guys. Thank you for running the show. Shout out to your sponsors, Alienware and Grubhub. Actually, I was going to ask you about your Alienware link.
Yes.
Because I'm in Canada and I don't think it works.
It is not, unfortunately. Because of the way that a bunch of the stuff is set up on the back end, Canadian orders do not count towards that. But if anybody does want to support me from Canada and wants to buy an Alienware system or monitor or something, you can always just purchase it and then tweet at Alienware or let me know in some way, and I always send those messages over to them so that they know that it happened. But unfortunately, we don't have the ability to do the direct revenue support that we do right now.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for the call. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, we are getting to our last call, and we are about $385 short of our fundraising goal for the tonight's show. So if anybody wants to help us, you guys have about 5 minutes left to make that happen. LaRoche.
Before LaRoche goes, I apologize in advance because I stepped on his toes when I told the previous caller, rudiferr, that it was the double elim take, because this is the double elim take and stuff like that.
LaRoche, where are you calling from?
Calling from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Ooh, you're kind of quiet. I'm going to turn you up to...
Sorry.
Oh,
From Charlotte,
you're a
North
little
Carolina.
loud. Okay, perfect. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So this is about the world's format. I think that it's a little bit different than most people's idea of how to do double elimination. I think that we should seed the third place in each group directly into a loser's bracket. So it would work similar to how LCS playoffs work, with the 7 and 8 seed were directly into losers. And then you have the rest of the normal seed 1 and seed 2 from pool and winners bracket. So normally, we have in our bracket stage for Worlds, you have 7 best of 5s over 7 days, and that's usually 3 weekends. If you do what I'm, kind of proposing, I guess, you get 16 best of 5s, and you can do that over 12 days, in my opinion. So back, I think at least before 2018, the quarterfinals matches, they used to do 2 best of 5s in one day. And then for play-ins, for their best of 5 stage, they also do 2 best of 5s in one day. So I think for the quarterfinals kind of section, you could do 2 best of 5s each day over 4 days. So you get 12 total broadcast days. So, that would be more work for the broadcast team.
So how do you solve for? Do you just have Worlds take place all in the same location? Because part of the challenge is that they need those days to move things from New York to Atlanta and that type of stuff.
Sure, yes. So we would add kind of 1 extra week to Worlds. So
oh my God, it's
right,
already so fucking long. It's
three
so long,
weekends
LaRoche.
before.
LaRoche, are you killing anything to make room for this, or are you just stapling it onto the bottom, like the losers bracket?
I'm stapling it onto the bottom right now.
Okay, what if you make losers bracket best of 3s and you do 2 a day?
I think you could do that best of 3 up until the losers
final.
The losers final.
Yeah.
And then that changes to best of 5. But it's kind of weird. I'm not sure if we could. We've never done. We used to do best of 3s back at season 3 Worlds, but since season 4 we've only done best of 5. So I'm not sure if changing to best of 3s. I don't know. That might be a little bit of a jump. And
I mean, your thing is a much bigger jump, LaRoche. So I've tried to soften the landing on the jump that you're making.
I think that's ultimately the problem. Is you could do best of 3s. International does best of 3s. I think maybe people could swallow it a little bit, but I think the problem is just the broadcast days, increasing them substantially, as well as just the length of the tournament. It's already a pretty long tournament. It goes for about a month, and I don't think
more than a month.
You can just put. Well, yeah, it goes for more than a month. So you can't just put another week on there. Yeah. But
yeah, that's.
I think there's ways to make the losers bracket work. I like, in some sense, what a lot of the regional leagues in the West do about you see some teams in the losers bracket like you're talking about, but then instead of doing the problem I've always had with our current group stage, and I think would solve so many problems, and I pitch it every year, I'm gonna pitch it again. The group stages are terrible at actually evaluating strength of teams, because there are these 4 little pods with only 4 teams in them, and everyone who comes out number 1 is treated as the same strength as a number 1 seed. and all the 2 seeds are as the same strength as the number 2 seed. And like maybe your 2 seed was weaker than this person's 3rd seed, but now we don't know because they're not playing each other. You solve so many problems if you take these 4 groups and combine them into 2 groups and then make them all play each other. And instead of doing a double round robin, you do a single round robin. It works out to almost the same number of games. This solves 2 problems. 1, more matchups, so you don't have to watch the same teams play twice, which isn't necessarily bad, but I think, it's just more individual matches that you get to see. And 2, it solves the problem of power ranking these teams. Like, which 1 seed is better between the 4? Like, you don't really know. But at least if this, you get a 1, 2, 3, 4 seeding as opposed to just a 1, 2 4 times. You get 2 1, 2, 3, 4s, which will then allow you to seed a bracket somewhat better. Then, if you are stapling on a loser's bracket, it's very nice to take those 4 place teams and just stick them in a loser's bracket and make the top side 1, 2 weighting, number 1s weighting in like a little bit further on. This is similar to how all the NA, LCS, and LEC brackets are. The 1 seeds from each group get a bye. The 2s and the 3s play each other in the first round of the winner's bracket, and loser's bracket is preceded with the losers teams. And this allows us to usually complete playoffs in 3 weeks already in the regional leagues. So you could keep the 3 weeks of bracket play with a lower bracket. So that would be my pitch if I was going to do anything. And it doesn't really change broadcast days, and it allows you to get all this kind of stuff.
And now none of you guys have to watch the Blame game this week.
I'm going to do it again with graphics because, as someone just said, we understood what you said. I was not very eloquent there. So, my bad.
Boom.
Yeah.
2 people tried to hit the 28 cent part by both donating the 28 cents at the same time. It's very funny. Okay.
56.
Thank you. Thank you so much to LaRoche for the call. Anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, shout out Alienware and Grubhub, and keep making the content. Really enjoyed Blame Game, so keep doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll catch you next time. All right, that is the show. Mark Zimmerman. Okay, so first off, nobody leave because we're going to be looking at, as if you missed at the beginning of the show, we're going to be watching and premiering a North American World's Hype video that Sylvix has made with his team. So please stick around for that. Mark, what do you got for us? What's coming out? What's going on in your world? What are you trying to promote?
Shout outs to the Blame game coming out this week. Already spoiled some of it. But it'll be much better of a watch then. Then also shout out to Worlds Prep. We'll have to be doing that this week. Looking forward to watching all these teams play. That's
fantastic. You love to see it. Okay. And then for me, I am going to probably tomorrow. I am going to be putting out the next episode of Dinner With, which will feature none other than Broden Plett. And I'm realizing I don't have my wallet on me right now for this donation thing. None other than Broden Plett. So please tune into that. I know a lot of you guys know Broden from back whenever he was in the Travis Gafford Industries ecosystem. He's now doing really great things over at Offline TV, and he's been around for a long time, has some cool stories to tell. So please go check that out. It's going to be really good. And we just hit our $1,000.28 goal. Thank you, all of you guys, for coming through. Really appreciate it. Somebody very impressive closing the gap at the end. But either way, that's going on. Speaking of that, I'm going to shout out some folks here at the end who did help support, who I haven't had a chance to read out yet. Immortal Scrub with the 25, N Streep with the 50, Darth Nomi and Doomraker, thank you for your primes, Sophia with the 10, Mark Z with 50, Sophia with another 15, Bloodbath Cath with 50, Rudiferr for 1028, and Poison Flame as well, Ophir for 20, and Noblet. So thank you, everybody, for supporting the charity drive tonight. Glad we were able to make that happen. But other than that, that's it for Hotline League. I feel like there's something else I'm supposed to be mentioning. I got nothing. We'll see you next week.